Yeah, I know when they announced this movie, there was a lot of backlash about Chris Evans playing Buzz Lightyear. Immediately everybody just jumped and said, "How dare you replace Tim Allen? Tim Allen is Buzz Lightyear. How dare you replace him? That's not my Buzz." But I don't think people realize, or at least they forgot, that there was a Buzz Lightyear cartoon about 20 years ago. And in that cartoon, he was voiced by Patrick Warburton. And I bring that up because I'm pointing out that this isn't the first time that someone other than Tim Allen has voiced Buzz. And I was fine with Evans' performance. I mean, at first it was a bit distracting, because all I could hear was Captain America, but, I got used to it after a while, and he's fine, and that pretty much sums up this movie. Everything about it is either the bare minimum or underdeveloped. For one, this movie starts off with text explaining that when Andy was a kid, this was his favorite movie. The movie you're about to watch was a movie that Andy saw when he was a kid, and it's the movie that made him want the Buzz Lightyear toy. And that serves as a great example for why kids should not be movie critics, because if this was his favorite movie, he doesn't have very good taste. And if we're using the fact that this is a movie that exists in the Toy Story universe, this brings up another problem, because the opening credits say Disney and Pixar. So does that mean that Disney and Pixar exist in Pixar movies? And also, if the humans in Toy Story are animated, does it mean that for this film, the humans in this movie are animated, or is it live action? I don't know. And it's odd, because that opening text says, in 1995 he saw this movie, so I don't know if he saw it when it was brand new, or if it was like an older movie that he saw later, but, it's kind of supported in Toy Story 2, because there's that joke about the Barbie doll at the toy store saying, back in 1995, we couldn't keep the Buzz Lightyears in stock, or something like that. So I'm assuming that that's probably, 1995 is probably when this movie came out in their universe and everybody wanted to get a Buzz Lightyear toy. But it doesn't feel like a movie made in 1995. It feels like a movie made in 2022, which is a shame, because they could have made this a throwback style movie to sci-fi films of the 90s, like how the original Star Wars trilogy was made in the style of Flash Gordon and other sci-fi of the 40s, because that's what George Lucas grew up with. But everything about this is so modern, so it doesn't make sense if we as the audience are supposed to buy into the idea that this is a movie made in the 90s. And also, the pacing for this movie is so all over the place, particularly the first half, because the first half of it moves very, very quickly. It doesn't really give you a lot of time to process what's going on. And also, there's a scene where they're on a planet and they're able to breathe without their helmets, which, okay, but they don't even bother to check the atmosphere before going outside. And that's a pretty big deal in the first Toy Story movie, because when he takes off Buzz's helmet and he still thinks he's a space ranger, so he starts pretending to choke him. He's like, "Oh, I can breathe on this planet. How dare you open my helmet?" So if these are highly trained space rangers, they don't check to see if the air is breathable before going outside without their helmets. So that, the biggest problem with this movie is that all of the characters, and including Buzz in this, all of the characters in this movie, every single one of them is so underdeveloped. The best character in this movie, and that's not even saying that much, is the robot cat. The actual main characters are also underdeveloped. And Buzz's arc is he has to learn how to work with his team, which, okay, but there was an animated Buzz Lightyear movie, which was a pilot for that show, and his character arc was learning how to work with his team, so they're kind of repeating that. And, there's a character who's the granddaughter of someone Buzz worked with years ago, and her only two character traits are she wants to be as great a space ranger as her grandma was, and she's afraid to actually go into space. Those are her two character traits, and they're repeated over and over. And there are these other two space rangers who works with, one's a criminal on probation, and the other is played by Taika Waititi, and I don't remember a dang thing about him. That's how underdeveloped and unmemorable these characters are. And even the villain is underdeveloped. Zurg is supposed to be, based on Toy Story, he's supposed to be like Darth Vader. He's supposed to be this big menacing villain, and he's barely in it. He shows up maybe during the last half hour, and there's the plot twist near the end about him, which I won't spoil, but it was so stupid, and it barely made any sense. The movie it feels very rushed. It doesn't even really feel like they used a script. It feels like they used an outline of a script. It's like they had all these ideas, like, here's all these ideas that we want to do. We'll flesh them out later. But then they ran out of time, so they just used what they had. There was a lot of missed potential with this movie. I didn't hate it, but it's certainly light years away from being fantastic. So I have to give Lightyear a C+, 7 out of 10, and a 3 out of 5 stars.